This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it is 3:07 and I call the City of Blanco regular or special meeting and budget workshop to order. Roll call.
Mayor Rachel Lumpy.
Present.
Mayor Pro-Tem Salzberger. Councilmember McClellan.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Present.
Councilmember Barron.
Present.
Councilmember Devine.
Present.
Great. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I do not have any announcements, so we're going to go to public comments. Do we have any public comments? First, we have Susan Moore.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I just wanted to bring some attention to the zoning changes. I know you haven't brought it up to me yet, but I would like just to have some discussion with you briefly regarding the 2014 versus the 2021 zoning map. I noted that I gave you a packet which is on the desk with the zoning with the 2014 zoning map and the 2021 proposed map. in your packet. I noted the major changes on the 2021 map by indicating the previous zoning symbols in black on the areas for the district change. The major changes are the R5 zone, which replaces the old MX zone and identifies the identified R1, R2, R3 zones and the government, utility, and institution zones. The 2014 map designated all the residential zones as one district, and they're all in blue. It did not identify the three various residential zones. Each of the three residential zones is identified on the 2021 map in dark blue, dark maroon, and green. The commission added the industrial zone at the south end of town, made the brewery an industrial zone at the north end of town, and changed the area along 281 surrounding the brewery from mixed use to commercial. The commission also increased the residential zone area by changing the previous MX zone to residential R2 zone beginning at 9th Street to slightly north of Santa Fe Court. I've included the uses by the zoning district, table 4. The old MX heading with the R5 new R5 zone changes are in red, and the minimum requirements are not standards in table 5 for your reference when you review the 2021 zoning changes. Also, the previous MX purpose description and the current R5 purpose description from table 4.1. The commission used the 2014 map as the basis for the proposed map. The 2021 map was constructed primarily by districts, not by each property, except for the industrial and the GUI. I know the city council may find a few properties that need to be addressed because we did it by district, not necessarily each property. This map is a living, breathing document, and as such needs to be updated periodically as the city grows. It's not to be thrown out or disregarded, but updated as needs change. I hope this assists the city council in your review of the 2021 P&Z approved map, and I'd be happy to discuss any issues with you that you deem necessary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your work.
Ms. Rudder Martin.
for y'all today. I love this time of the year. I've been here a long time, every time. I'm here today for the Streetscape Committee, and I'm here today for the Keep Blanco Beautiful Committee too. It's not a committee, it's a 501c3. We have, in December, we resurrected, it wasn't even enacted, the attorney said, a resolution that was made to us in 2009, and our first meeting was 2010 for the Streetscape Committee to develop a master plan for the Historic Commission. And so we had done that, and then in 2017, the mayor had put us on hold for a while. So in the December, I came back to the council and we did reactivate it, even though he said it wasn't inactive at the time. We did an amendment from 10 committee members to 5. And so we have been busy ever since then, getting our FQs out for a planner, and we have two RFQs that we're reviewing now, and they're pretty close to being decided on. At the time that we did the first plan, the Keep Blanco Beautiful was assigned because we're 501c3 under management of agreement to where we collect the funds, donations for the streetscape plan. And so any money that's coming in, we're on the budget. Our liaison, Mike Smith, is, I think, put us on the budget to match money that Keep Blanco Beautiful was still holding from early. And so we're asking the city to match that again, just like it was before. And so, but there's also going to be, we understand that when we get a planner, it's probably going to be more than those 2 funds will be. So we'll be doing fundraising. We'll be starting fundraising as soon as possible. But I want you to know about the Keep Blanco Beautiful MOA, and it will go in there. And we have, that's what we did before. We even had the thermometer that showed how much we've raised up on the square. But we'll start that again. And so I just wanted to bring that to you. Keep Blanco Beautiful is the Historic Commission does the buildings and the streets and the curbs and the sidewalks and all that. The Keep Blanco Beautiful does the landscaping and all the beautification. And so we've been around since 1999, and we are really anxious to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to old business. Number 1 is discussion and possible action on contract negotiations with Kelly Kinsler as interim city administrator. So I believe everybody received her proposed agreement contract. Is there a discussion?
I guess I'll start off. I guess Kelly, I have some questions, if you don't mind. Okay, you've tendered a proposed agreement to us, and you have previously sent it to our attorney.
Correct.
And then he has responded back, and we just got a copy of his response, which is prepared by an attorney. So.
I've not, Mayor, Councilman Smith, I've not seen a response.
Okay. Well, might be beneficial if you had access to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Do we have an extra copy? Martin has one. Well, but I will leave it. There is.
Who sent the response? Who sent that to you?
It was handed out.
Brad sent email to me and Martin.
Okay, and then you just forwarded.
And then I
it.
just printed
Okay.
that this morning.
Did this come in today?
It came in last night.
Last night? Okay. Well, apparently Brad is out of pocket, and he left on the 18th, won't be back till the 1st of August. He has a partner, Art Rodriguez, that can potentially be available depending on scheduling and his availability. I guess I've gone over the agreement, and I guess we received this yesterday. Probably.
You did receive it yesterday.
Yeah, we got it yesterday.
The attorney, we were waiting for the attorney's feedback. I didn't even know. We had attorney feedback.
Yeah, so we've got his feedback on it. I do have concerns. I guess one of my concerns is the buyout at termination and the consideration that's there.
Mayor and Councilmember Smith, that was my concern as well. I actually asked the attorney to get us advice about that. Because you're in an interim placement, I didn't know that, I didn't feel like that was appropriate.
Okay,
So.
we're in agreement on that then. So, you know, our attorney said,
I took everything else out of my old contract, except in the base salary, and all the other stuff. I took everything out, but I left that in and said I wanted to pick, I wasn't sure about that. So. Because it's on interim, I know what you're taking now.
what do you think would be fair?
Mayor, Councilmember Smith, take it out altogether. I know because it's an interim placement, I'm okay.
All right,
So you would take out paragraph 16? Okay.
Mayor,
Delete 16.
all right. Then my next question.
Let me just rephrase that. That is correct, unless it would become a more permanent placement, and then I would.
Right, it would, I mean, this would be during the interim position, not a permanent position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And from some brief conversations we had in passing, at one point, I thought this was gonna come through City Hall Essentials.
Mayor, Councilman Smith, no. I'm gonna do this as an interim.
Right.
But,
I can tell that now. But
yeah, but City Hall Essentials still is somewhat involved in that when you sign a contract with City Hall Essentials, I think they've maybe been heard on this a few times. I can't remember what it says, I believe they get 5% for the first year. But this is really on a month-to-month basis.
But this contract we're entering into is not with City Hall Essentials.
That's
They're,
right.
this is exclusive to them. They're not in it. And then I checked with Linda, our financial director, and the burden is typically for an employee is about 25% with all the benefits. And this one, you're calling for part of the benefits to be compensated back to you on the health program you have or things like that, where we wouldn't pick it up.
Mayor, Councilman Smith, that is correct. So I would actually, even as an interim, I would be eligible for insurance benefits.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm willing to waive those, and because I just can pay for them on my own out of a New Mexico.
Right. And then we'd compensate you for that as long as it
Exactly. Well, doesn't cost
come in
the city.
free. As long as the cost is the same to us, you can go to this spot or you can go to
That's exactly right.
this spot.
Exactly, yes, sir.
Okay. But you've answered some of my questions, or most of them. Does anybody else have any questions?
The only thing I have a question on that I guess because I'm just not used to us seeing this is on number 11, a city issued phone, no biggie, but a city issued vehicle for use by the employee.
So if I actually contacted your chief, because I didn't know if such a vehicle was available.
He's got a great Taurus, I understand.
So if you can go, to Austin for business or TML or wherever for business that you need to go, you can take city vehicle.
Okay.
So it wouldn't just be for being in the city, driving around, okay, just on special trips outside?
Would a mileage allowance be acceptable? Yeah, I mean, I did, to the other council members, I did do some checking with other cities and having a vehicle available for the city administrator is a standard or a vehicle allowance, of things.
And I had vehicle allowance and various allowances in my last contract. I just don't. Right now it's on an interim basis. And so just as long as my retirement doesn't end up going down, I don't want this to negatively affect the retirement.
And you've done that evaluation?
I have, yes, sir.
Okay.
If we issued a vehicle, it would probably be a pickup truck or a black and white.
Well, the vehicle's considered, you get taxed on the vehicle for the miles you drive it to and from work.
That's right.
I mean, it's, they can furnish a vehicle and if they're buying the gas, typically, then your tax, you have to declare your mileage back and forth and that you pay income tax on that. I guess it'd be the same thing for the mileage allowance. I don't know.
Well, with law enforcement, for instance, who's on call, all those city managers also, it's 24/7,
Yeah.
and that would be waived.
Okay,
That's my understanding. Practicing, I'm not a tax expert.
So I think I had some concern about the annual base salary. Is that set?
Mayor, councilors, let me just answer it in two ways. The one thing
Okay.
that we do have finished, not finished, it's got 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 city managers' salaries. And I'll tell you the communities that they came from in order to ease Councilor Salcedo's concern. They came from Marble Falls, Horseshoe Bay, Dripping Springs, Castroville, Burnett, Bull Verde, and Shenandoah Park. And if you look at all the salaries, the average annual salary for city manager in these specific cities was $149,000. And there's one in particular that just honestly brought it pretty low.
And so, I guess my question is, a lot of those cities, I don't know about Castroville, but a lot of those cities are considerably larger than our city.
So.
Were there any comps that were
Yes.
closer in size?
Yes, ma'am. Castroville is 3,000, Horseshoe Bay is 4,000.
No.
Shenandoah Park is 3,000, Bull Verde is 5. All of them actually are
Okay.
5.
They're just in sprawl areas.
The biggest one, it's interesting, the biggest one was Marble Falls at 7,000, and they actually had the smallest salary. These other ones didn't, yeah.
Okay.
We still have other cities that Joe's trying to get to respond. Wimberley, Mountain City, Comfort, Hondo, Johnson City, but there's not many responses. So we have about half of the market survey done, and that's where we are so far.
Do we know if Johnson City even has a city manager?
If what, I'm sorry.
Johnson City even has a city manager. I didn't.
It has the city administrator.
They do.
They do.
Okay.
When I looked this morning on that, it said they have a city secretary / COA, and then they have a city clerk / administrator assistant. So the titles are different, but
Mhm. They don't have one person acting as a city administrator.
I don't believe so.
That may be why they have to respond.
okay. Well, Ms. Kinsler, would you consider an offer at $150,000, which would be more commensurate with the information you just provided?
Mayor, Councilmember Smith, I would not, but I would give you somebody very capable at that salary. And the only reason I will not is because I've stripped it to nothing really but salary.
Right.
And I can't let it affect me negatively on the retirement side.
I understand.
And so I just brought over the exact same salary from where I was before and took out all the benefits. But I can definitely, I'm very happy to refer you to somebody else. He's actually sitting right here in the audience that I think would do.
I think when I look at this, Mayor, fellow council members, I think that if Kelly comes on board with us for an interim to get this place in shape, it might be 6 months, it might be a year. When we look to budget, I think we could go with someone at a lesser level down the line. But we are in a hell of a mess right now. We have federal funds about to hit. We have no CIPs in place. We don't have the information we need to get our PIFs in line to get funding that's here. We have nobody on board with grant writing expertise. She has it. She's more familiar with everything because of the consulting that's happened. This is an interim position. We're not getting married. We're going to live together for a while and see how it works out. And so it's one of those things that to shave $10,000 off for the year, we've seen in retrospect decisions that were made to save a few thousand, like fixing up an old clarifier or doing something else because it seemed like a more a wiser thing to do at the time. This is a big amount to bite off for what Blanco is used to, but we've seen what's been uncovered so far and the challenges we have ahead of us in the next 6 months. If we want to get our budgeting, our accounting software in place and our budgeting done in time, since we're already late, and I'm just not sure now is the time to be sweating over a $10,000 difference if we have a capable, competent person who's willing to take this as an interim and understands that we're not committing to her long-term future with us, but she'll help keep digging us out of the mess we're in until we get everything in order. And then when it's in shape and we're ready to look for that to heaven to hold forever and always, whether we decide that's the right person or we want to go out and date a while, we can do that again if we need to. But I'm for a difference of listening to those other salaries, for that little bit of a difference, knowing the state that our city operations are in right now and the things we're facing with the wastewater treatment plan and the water treatment plan and on, I would like to feel like we have somebody driving this right now that we have confidence in and is capable and is willing to take the short ride at least.
Thank you, Councilmember Barron, and for the benefit of the whole council, if I recommended somebody else to you, I would only be, I would be very comfortable with that recommendation, and I would make sure that, we transitioned nicely. But I'll tell you, literally daily, I'm turning away work because of Blanco. Just an hour ago, again, got another one. And so, I would like the decision to be made so that I can go on with the consulting and do what I need to do. I turned away lots. So.
Is there any further discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I move that we enter into an employment agreement for interim city administrator with Kelly Kinsler.
Councilmember Barron?
As amended.
As amended, thank you very much. As
Oh.
Excuse me. So, and I just want to clarify the whole, because I know in Brad's notes it was 16, 17, and 18, and they're sort of all related. So are all of those struck?
Yeah.
Um,
There was 16, 17, 18.
Well, 17,
16 is gone.
yeah, 17 really is not applicable. I mean, it just,
16 is gone.
well, it says if there's a salary cut across the board,
Okay,
so,
okay,
18 is still, the only paragraph that would be removed would be 16.
just 16. And then what about the vehicle? Did we decide that that's going to be a mileage per diem or?
why do we can put that in the motion.
That's the pleasure of the body.
Okay.
We just say an agreeable, or I guess there's a federal mileage rate. We'll go by the federal mileage rate and maybe not to exceed $500 a month. I think that would be fair.
Mhm.
And if something came up, she's having to travel a lot more than that, then we could make
Mhm.
a variance on that. So now how does the motion stand? Okay.
I don't stand real well right now.
I know you don't stand, but, so I guess what you've got is you've got a motion that we're going to enter into the employment agreement, and we're going to omit item 16 in the agreement,
Correct,
and we're going to substitute a mileage allowance up to $500 a month.
right.
Okay.
11 would be amended. The employer will, now we're going to do a phone. We need
I don't
to-
see anything wrong with that.
Will provide a city issued phone and a mileage allowance not to exceed $500 per month, or use of a city issued vehicle for use by the employee for business purposes. So we could do either one.
Okay.
That'll give us some flexibility. Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Barron has made a motion to accept the Kelly Kinsler as the interim city administrator and her contract with a few changes, omitting number 16 and changing number 11 to a mileage allowance of $500 a month, or having her use a city vehicle,
Not
No,
to
not to exceed.
not to exceed $500. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Smith has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, let's get to work.
Amen.
I'm trying to be in a way and not looking.
Okay, moving on to item number 2, discussion and possible action on adoption of the City Blanco personnel policy. Ms. Kinsler.
Mayor, council, thank you. Let me just help that.
You need me? I'll get you some.
So I think we tabled this because we wanted the department directors to look at it, and I assume they've all reached back to you.
Mayor, council, so at the last meeting, July 13th meeting, the only feedback that I had was from the police chief, and it was incorporated into the manual. None of the other directors had input or wanted anything changed, with the exception of Public Works.
Okay.
And so if you'll go to the second screen. Can you make that the full screen? Yeah. There we go. Okay, second page, please. Thank you, Zach. So last week, Mayor Pro Tem Salcedo suggested that all directors comment on the personnel manual. I thought that was a great suggestion. I'm glad he did that. I only received 2 comments, asked some of the other directors, but the only director I got comments from was Zach and Ronnie from Public Works. But I did get comments from Councilmember Smith, and those have been incorporated into the changes, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier, Chief Rubin had already taken it upon himself to go through every chapter and let me know what might or may not interfere with police operations. So today's presentation includes the same manual presented at the July 13th meeting, but incorporates the Public Works and Councilmember Smith's comments. Some of Public Works. So the HR function has been added in throughout the entire policy manual. And I think I explained in my email back to you, Councilmember Smith, that when Joe was writing the sections regarding personnel, he did not know, I did not know that we actually had an HR director. When Linda told me about her experience and what her master's degree was in, it's like, oh, guess what? You're going to be the personnel director as well. And I had not passed the information on to Joe. So that's where that went wrong. But if you notice, every section in there that we have referenced now adds changes to include the Human Resources Department. The manual, and I actually, Counselor Smith, because you're the one who suggested all those changes, we actually emailed that to you with those suggested changes. So the reason I don't have one for you today is because I just got Public Works revisions an hour and a half ago. And so I had to look them up, and one of them I had to compare with federal law, so I wasn't ready for it. The manual also spells out the department director is in charge of making the recommendation to hire and fire a person. I don't know a city administrator, maybe there is one out there, I'm sure there is, there's one everywhere. But when, if the city of Blanco needs a police sergeant, I'm not gonna make that decision. It's gonna be the department director. They're the ones who have the expertise but your city administrator usually signs off on a final saying, yep, the salary's in line with the pay scale, qualifications are met, we both agree, that's it. So we put that spelled out department director, and just the fact that they're gonna make the recommendations on both hiring and firing. In almost all instances, the advice will be heeded from the department director unless it violates 14A, having a hard time seeing this pacing that way. Or if they don't have ample enough evidence to go forward with what they're trying to do. They need ample documentation so that they can warrant whatever action it is that they need to take. So basically, if the department director's ducks are in a row, then their recommendations are going to be followed. And then also we added language and put in the website for the EEOC. You can go to the next page. 1.17A and B wanted the words "in view of the public" out, as they feel it was unnecessary. This has to do with the smoking provision and designating an area that Mayor Pro Tem Salceda had a concern with. So Public Works has the same concern. They're in the field, so they don't think that it would be hard to have a designated area if somebody from Public Works smoked. And that was Council Member Salceda's concern as well. They also did say, though, it would be impractical if one of them, especially if there's like a water leak or something like that, and they're out in the field, it's not like they're going to leave their job and go smoke. So they wanted the words "in view of the public" out because they felt like it's unnecessary. Although Public Works is always one of my favorite departments, or is my favorite department usually, I don't agree with that recommendation. I think it's an image thing. I think that we do need designated areas somewhere back here if there's a smoker. I don't think it looks good when you're sitting out here in this beautiful town square smoking as the representative of the city. So it's a policy, that's your call, but I like it in there. Sections 2.2E, take out the word "benefits" on the second line, so there's no condition that employers who are on disciplinary probation still get health benefits. And I agree with that recommendation from Public Works, and that's done. Next page. Public Works also had 3 or 4, let me grab their stuff. Make sure they're represented fairly. Zach, feel free to speak up if I'm not remembering something.
Sorry, can you go over that last one again? You were speaking so fast I couldn't.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. So section 2.2E, it was the smoking one that we talked about. No,
Right. No.
2.2E is the benefits. So what it basically says is that if a disciplinary probation, if somebody gets disciplinary probation, in other words, they have to go back on probation
Right.
as a employee who's technically off of probation already, they're not entitled to benefits, and it talks about annual leave and sick leave. But Zach and Ronnie felt like the word "benefits" on there also implied like health benefits or something like that. So they just wanted the word "benefits" struck, and I agree with them. I think it's a good move. So we would just take out that word, and it makes it really crisp and clean. And then, okay, then Public Works had a concern that someone may not perform well in a department and that the directors would have no input. That has been changed to department director, to human resources, to city administrator. So we put an extra step in there. This is one they wanted changed, but we couldn't. We have to leave the federal law in there.
Which one?
The one regarding FMLA.
Sorry.
It was 205D. And what the law says is that if you are unable to perform the essential functions of your job, then the city can either try to find someone else to do your job, or you can be let go. Because in other words, if Linda suddenly could not add or subtract or do math anymore, she probably wouldn't be a very good budget officer, right? If she lost that ability somehow. If somebody lost, their ability to drive, and their job was, they were driving, what do you call those things, excavators or whatever for Public Works, then they would be unable to perform the essential functions of their job. And so what they were comparing it against was a workers' comp situation, and those are two different things. So we left the federal law alone. And let's see. The other one that they had an issue with, but after Zach and I talked about it, I don't think they do have an issue anymore. It says the city prohibits the use of alcohol and its adverse effects while on duty. And
Yeah, with previous.
so what it says isn't, yeah, it's just not on here. But what it says contained within that section is that an employee may not drink up to 8 hours before their shift. And so Zach's question was, how are we going to enforce that? Well, I don't think it's about enforcing it. If somebody smells of alcohol, we send them to get a test, a breathalyzer test. But I think it puts them on notice. You need time for the alcohol to get out of your system before you get to come to Public Works and operate a dump truck or whatever. So we left that in there. And I think those were your only, anything else that I addressed? Okay. So those were Public Works concerning that were addressed, either fixed in the manual or we didn't feel like we needed to fix them once we discussed them.
Has the HR, is that going to be added to the organizational chart or just under finance?
It's the finance / human resources.
Okay.
Exactly.
So it would, the one that you submitted to us, it would stay the same
That's
except
right.
for the.
Yes, Mayor, good question.
Okay.
I believe there was a provision, and I did not send this to you, Kelly, but there was a provision in there for new hires that they were under a probationary period for 12 months. Is that standard?
Yes, that's absolutely standard. I believe that they have 3 or 6, Joe.
We had
90
three.
days, yes. I mean, what you want to do is be able to train somebody with all the job, requirements, and then watch them perform for a while. You want to be able to get through an evaluation. 3 months doesn't tell you a whole lot. So especially when somebody's in training, Lori's a great example. She's having to learn, she's having to learn how to be a city secretary. She was a secretary before, and it's very different being a city secretary. So how long have you been here, a year? Year and a half. She still has to pass the second part of her test to be, she's halfway there being certified city secretary, but it takes some time. And so I don't think that it's wise to allow somebody to kick them off probation after 3 months. I don't think it's good for the employer or the employee. I think they need that constant feedback, and so that's definitely my recommendation.
Well, I have a comment on that. And I can see where that would be true in the case of Lori, but I wonder if that's true in other positions in Public Works, places like that, where maybe a 6-month probationary period might be more appropriate than 12 months. And another thing that about that, before I forget the thought, and I don't know how to find it in here, maybe you know where it is, but it was about the evaluation of employees, the employees, and maybe we've covered this, being evaluated by the city administrator, where it seems, again, that role should fall to the department head.
It did.
And so that's changed in the changes we already talked about. Okay, great. But
my comment, I would support a year. I just, having employed lots and lots and lots of people, I think it's, and it's hard to say, well, in this job, we'll do it for 6 months, but in this job, we'll do it for 3 months because of the benefits. And as long as, if I recall, they're eligible for their benefits immediately. So they're, from the time we hire them, even though they're in a probationary period, there really isn't any change other than they should still hopefully be putting best foot forward, and the department heads are evaluating them and understanding that they're in a growth and development period to see if they grow into the job, if that's the case, or I'm not sure that it changes anything if you bring them in 3 months or in 6 months or in a year, as long as they're being paid and the benefits are being accrued. But
And I can add something too, that you can always, if you have a year-long evaluation period, one of the things that a lot of department heads do is put PRPs in place that they see somebody slacking and they think that they can put them in a different direction to make them produce more, you put a PRP in place. And then you evaluate, based on that PRP, because you as a director are putting it to where you feel that their needs are in their weaknesses. So you're addressing the weakness.
And can you tell me what a PRP is?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a personal improvement plan.
Thank you.
I know it as a performance improvement plan.
Performance, yeah.
On the police department, they're evaluated daily for their first 3 months and weekly for their second.
And then that way they can, if at the end of 3 months, they're not doing some of the things that you want them to with the PIP in place, they know as the employee, because you've actually gave them direction as to where they need to go, what they need to concentrate on.
Right.
So,
So the
I'm a
police
big fan
department
of
is a 6-month probation. Is that what you're saying? Or no, did I get that wrong? Chief?
Sorry.
So you're backward for me too, I can't see you. So in the police department, it's a 6-month probation period.
So we call it a training period.
Okay.
People like the term probation, but a training period. And you'll see, and in the manual, there's reference to that.
Okay.
Because everyone's an actual employee, so you want to apply that you're protected when you get out of probation.
Okay.
So they're a probationary police officer, according to our field training program for 6 months.
Okay.
After that,
Okay.
Well, wouldn't the police department fall under this same policy manual?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, Counselor Smith, they do fall under the policy, under this personnel plan, and where Chief Rubin may have, because he has best practices in place for the police department, so where that might contradict our personnel plan, we say with the exception of the police department, and then go on and
Right.
tell them what section to refer to.
So if it's 6 months for the police department, then they've still got another 6 months probation with us.
For the city.
Mayor, counselors, I'll just tell you, having done a lot of human resources in my life background, I have a really extensive background in HR. I really like 1-year probationary periods. But I also think that Chief Rubin made a really good point. And we were talking about the personnel manual, it's like Texas is an at-will state, he's right. So. I don't know, in the state where I also practiced for a little while in New Mexico, it was a big deal. But in Texas, it's not quite as big of a deal because you are an at-will state.
Thank you.
I just had one last comment on section 2.04, number 1. It just, says like spouses, brothers, spouses, sisters. And I'd like to remove that plural sisters because everything else is singular. Just
Typo.
personal.
Okay, what do you want me to do?
The sisters has an S and I'd like to remove that S to keep it all the same.
Oh, I see it. You want me to that bothers me too. Good catch.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the personnel policy for the city of Blanco, Texas, with the format of the July the 13th, with all the items addressed in Ms. Kinsler's presentation, and retain the 12-month probation.
What about that little thing about in view of the public?
Yeah, what happened with view of the public?
I kind of like this.
I'm not asking that to be taken out.
Yeah, okay. That's in there right now, right?
Mayor, Councilor McClellan, yes, that's in there right now.
So, and then explain to me again how this does apply in the case of Public Works. They're out at a job on a street, they need to take a cigarette break. There's not a designated smoking area for them. What
So
happens?
I just think out of the view of the public.
Okay,
Is what applies to them. If they're not around an already designated smoking area, at least they can try to get out of the view of the public.
uh-huh.
I think that's what's sitting there.
Yeah, just leave it in there.
Okay, Councilmember Smith has made a motion to accept the adoption of the City of Blanco personnel policy with the items addressed today. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Barron has seconded. Any more discussion?
Sorry for being late. First of all, sorry for being late. Had some issues at work, but so what was discussed? I know I had brought up a few things. I didn't know who discussed that. I mean, I know you were talking about the smoking thing right there at the end. And
Mayor Councilor Saucedo, that's why I said you came in just in time when you walked in.
sounds like I'm almost a little late.
No,
Bring him up to speed.
so I'm going to try to bring you up to speed. So one thing that Chief Joe Salvato had worked on for me was some of the revisions in this personnel manual. And I did not make him aware that, I didn't know actually that Linda had such an HR background. And you shouldn't draft a policy based on a person, but it is nice to combine, as little as you are, it is nice to be able to combine finance and HR. And actually with this particular employee, you can actually do that. I don't know with all of them you'll be able to do that, but now you can do it. So before there was no HR person, and so it would go like director to city administrator. So once he realized there was or I told him there was an HR person, he fixed all of those issues for me, and it was actually issues that were brought up by Councilmember Smith. So we got those cleaned up, and then I didn't get, the rest of the city staff was fine with the revisions, with the exception of Public Works. And I went over what Public Works wanted item by item. And the item that we were just talking about was the smoking, which is, I think, what you brought up last meeting. And I still feel pretty strongly about presenting a positive image for the city. And I like designated places where people can smoke and out of the view of the public. And I went over this with Ronnie's on vacation, but Zach came in and talked to me today. And I think Public Works is okay as long as out of the view of the public is for them. Am I correct? I don't speak on your behalf.
No, that's, I mean, as long as it's understood, we'll do our best, but sometimes it is a little difficult.
Sure. So anyway, so they wanted that and a couple of other minor changes. Let me grab them from Public Works. Are getting ready for budget. See here. One of the things, two of the things that they had wanted changed were 1.13 and 1.17, which Councilmember Smith also wanted changed. That had already been done. Number 202 was changed as well before they even came in because of Councilmember Smith. Employees on probationary status, we just had a discussion about the city of Blanco right now has 90 days as a probationary period. And I proposed 1 year as a probationary period with performance improvement plans, as the budget officer just mentioned. So hopefully we can get everybody up to speed. And then Chief Rubin pointed out the fact that it's not that critical, the 90-day or the 12-month, because Texas is an at-will state. But I still like the 12-month probationary period. And then we talked about 2.05, which has to do with FMLA. And they wanted that changed, but I didn't, it's the federal law that we were citing, so I did not change that. Oh, and then the Public Works had a question about, they were wanting to know how to enforce a rule with the employer on their own time regarding alcohol. So right now, the personnel policy says that you cannot consume alcohol 8 hours prior to your shift. And one of the main reasons that people put that in plans is because you may drive a city vehicle, you may be driving a tractor for Public Works, whatever, and you should not be under the influence whatsoever. And so Zach and I talked about how do you enforce that? How do you know that? And you probably don't, unless somebody comes with, the odor of alcohol on their breath. And then as a department director, you can always send them for a test, a drug test or a drug and alcohol test. So I personally like keeping that in there, even though I understand what they're saying is how do you enforce it? You send them for testing, that's what you do. Even if you feel like somebody's acting different or they're under the influence, if they are, the liability and the harm that they can bring the city if something happens to them. I like having this in place. So, and I think that was it, right, Zach?
The benefits.
Oh, yes, that's right. So the other thing that we talked about was, where's that word benefits?
It's on the side.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. So they wanted to take out the word benefits on the second line of chapter 2, section 2E. So no confusion that employees who are on disciplinary probation still get health benefits. And so what we were trying, and I think that was a good catch on their part, and we took it out. Because what it's trying to say is that they don't get to have sick leave and annual leave and that kind of stuff while they're on disciplinary probation. In other words, I can't give you disciplinary probation in 1 month and then you got, fine, I'm gonna take a month of annual leave. That's what we're trying to prevent. But the word benefits right before, I think they were concerned that that implies that your health benefits could be taken away or something like that. So we just struck the word and made it a little crisper and a little bit cleaner. Did I represent all your changes?
I have one other comment about the alcohol issue now that I was just kind of going through it in my mind. So as council people, we're employees of the city. So if I had a beer or a glass of wine at lunch on the day I'm going to be at city council later, I would be in violation of this policy.
So the difference in council people versus the rest of us is that you are elected. And if somebody, you know, the way that you get removed is to be unelected, right?
Right, so we can just violate the policy.
I didn't say that.
It sounds like. Okay, so,
Point taken.
I mean, I'm just imagining, like, you know, because it does sound a little bit like it's getting into people's personal time and personal business.
Nobody at this dais, nobody in this room has any authority to say that you're kicked off the council. Only the voters can do that.
Yeah.
And you notice in the organizational chart, the voters at the very top, because they're really the bosses.
Right.
Oh, nobody else brought up that, I think I brought it up at that last meeting, the outside employment on page 28. I think that number 1 says all requests for outside employment, and I brought it up at the last meeting, you explained why, but I think paragraph number 2 kind of covers it. To me, that, I mean, if Zach wanted to mow grass, you know, is that considered out? I mean, it's just hard to enforce, or what is considered outside employment? Is it an official employment, or if you want to do a plumbing job? I mean, to me, I understand what the reason is. And to me, sentence number 2 or paragraph number 2 basically prohibits from engaging in outside employment that is not compatible with satisfactory performance. So basically, if you have an issue with Zach mowing grass, he's not showing up to work, then it's covered by item number 2. Doesn't need to be, I mean, to me, to get, I mean, yes, hopefully they would still let Ronnie know or let y'all know, hey, I got, you know, the second job, I'm going, you know, I got a mowing job on the side or a little plumbing job on the side, but to have y'all's written approval just seems a little.
Mayor Councilor Sauceda, so they are employed 40 hours a week, and they shouldn't be using those 40 hours on somebody else. The city should not be paying it. So if they want to call Ronnie, for instance, Zach got a lawn mowing job and he just needs to let Ronnie know, and he needs to take his leave for that.
Right, yeah, no, but this doesn't, this says all requests for outside employment must be approved in writing by the appropriate department director and city admin. So if he wanted to mow on a Saturday on his time off, he has to get permission from Ronnie and or the city administrator.
So I guess I consider outside employment a little bit different, but I see where you're coming from.
Right.
I mean.
To me, outside employment is outside of the 40 hours. I mean, of course, they're dedicated to the city for the 40 hours.
And I think I explained in the last meeting what the reason for
Right,
that
and I
is.
think that's captured in sentence number 2. It's saying you got a duty, I mean, you should.
Yeah, your duty is to the city, your primary duty
and
is to the
that's
city.
covered in
Exactly.
sentence number 2. It just seems a little micromanaging to say.
If you all want it out of there, you are the policy
I'm
maker.
not sure what everybody else thinks.
You're the policy maker. This is your policy.
Which section is that? Can you just
It's
point?
page 28.
Page 28?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Let me just get there so I can read.
Mayor Council, hello. Let me explain why I put that in there. I'll give you a story first, and then I'll explain exactly what you just said. I had a guy work for me in the police department who was doing all these extra jobs he wasn't putting in and telling us what he was doing. And he would come to work and he'd fall asleep in his patrol car because he was doing so many extra jobs. And so his outside employment began to affect his full-time employment. We would not have known that, and he got in trouble over it because he wasn't giving us they have to have an outside employment verification from us in the police department. He wasn't giving us that. So the only way you're gonna know that they're, Zach, I'm big on because he's here, Zach's performance is going down, and it's probably to do with the fact that he's running a side business, is to know that he's running a side business. And so by getting permission, I don't think that if Zach is running, if we know he's cutting yards on the side, I don't think anybody's gonna say, tell us per yard what he's got going on, but just tell us he's running a business cutting yards on the side. That's really what it's meant to be, so that if we start having problems with our employees, then we know exactly this is a problem. And during disciplinary issues, that's one of the things that can be taken away from them during disciplinary issues. And so you definitely want to know what they're doing when it comes to outside employment, not getting into their lives. It really is because outside employment can easily impact it. These guys working outside in the hot sun and heat, and they're already working 40+ hours at a time. You start cutting grass 20 more hours, 30 more hours a week, it starts becoming problematic and start impacting us on the job. So that's the reason for doing it. It's not meant to micromanage them or tell me every little job they're doing. If he's going to run a business, just let us know and get that approved in advance.
Is the language, oh, sorry about that, is the language notification or
It
permission?
says approved.
It says
Approved, and I guess that's
all
where it's over.
all requests for outside employment
Thank
must
you.
be approved.
Would it serve the same purpose, kind of what you're saying, and make
Just
it
to
feel
notify,
better if
yeah.
it said must notify,
So
must
would-
give notification of other, would
I don't
that
know about,
get that done?
yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't know about here, but I can tell you most of your law enforcement agencies and what we did in Leon Valley is they had to fill out a form. And so if they're gonna run a business, they're gonna do something like that, they'll fill out a form, let us know it.
So we already have that policy in place. I limit the number of hours they can work in a day, so it doesn't interfere with it. So if they want to work an off-duty job, they have to request in writing a review, to make sure it's a place that I want them working. And then we limit the number of hours that they can work a day. So patrol guys work 12-hour shifts. So if it's their day off, they can work 14 hours a day. So if it's a duty, they can only work a 2-hour additional than that. And like she said, is that it is an ongoing thing. So if they're working for one of these traffic companies, like when they were doing construction on 281, so they request that one time, I approve it as long as it's with a reputable company, but as long as it's within departmental policies, which means they're limited to those days. So they don't have to ask me every time they want to work for the same company. But if General Hills has a special event, they want to hire officers, that would be a different request. So it's.
Okay,
it's already
but
in place.
so that's in place for the police department already. But I'm wondering if it's as appropriate for other departments as it is for the police
I believe it is,
department.
Ben, because regardless of where we're on and off duty, we're still representative of where we work. And so if they know that Zach is an employee here and he goes and does something really stupid on a job, you quickly can be getting a phone call telling you that Zach did something really dumb, even though it wasn't on our property, that's going to impact the city as well in a negative light. That's all it comes down to. But just like the chief was just talking about, you want to limit their amount of time, we didn't go in that depth, but the director would be able to say, look, that's too many hours. You're working way too many hours, and it's impacting us here. The only way to know that is if he puts in and says, I want to work. Because I've had people put in at the police department 10 extra jobs, kind of like, wait a minute, let's talk about this. Okay, we need to make sure that we're not impacting your main job here. And if it does, we're going to yank them off.
Right.
So the only way you can have that conversation is if you know what they're doing when it comes to work outside.
I can understand that in the police department. I'm just questioning whether that needs to be a broad policy citywide, that someone who wants to mow lawns on Saturday needs to come and get written approval to be able to do that. That does seem like micromanaging to me and kind of getting into people's business. That's my view. That's
With notification, if it said notification.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that makes sense, because I would hope they would notify you, period, anyway.
You would have to notify your director that you're doing whatever, so they would, again, be able to know if
To
there
know
was
if-
some performance issue or whatever, they could at least raise that issue because they knew that you were doing this.
And wouldn't, if there was a performance issue, wouldn't HR be handling that anyway with one of these performance improvement plans?
Well,
I mean, you would,
no, Mayor, Councilor Devine, I don't think they would be. It wouldn't get to the HR until after the director had already addressed it. It's
right,
the manual doesn't say everything goes to the HR director, it goes to the department director first.
right. But I'm saying, if there's a problem, they're going to notice the problem and then it's going to get addressed because it's a problem,
Right.
not because there's a policy in place. They're going to notice a problem if there's a problem.
So
If Zach just can't keep his eyes open because he's mowing so many lawns on Sunday night, we're going to notice that Monday morning and we're going to go, Zach, we have a problem. Right? We're
So-
going to, but other than that, I don't really see needing to get written permission to
So
do
I'm
something
gonna
on
give it
your
one
own
more
time.
try, Mayor, Councilor Devine, just, I am absolutely not about micromanaging. There is plenty to do without
Yeah.
having a micromanager on board. That's crazy. But the same argument that Chief Rubin and Chief Salvaggio made about the police department, I would make the exact same argument about Public Works, who is operating city equipment. They're so exhausted, they can't do it, whatever it may be. I would make the exact same argument. And that leaves, 5 of us or however many, doesn't leave many staff.
Mhm.
And so then when you look at the staff, the other type of written permission, in my opinion, is if there's a conflict there.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
if
Understand that.
if your utilities clerk is also working for the private solid waste company that the city's receiving a franchise fee from, so you're not going to catch all of that unless you have somebody, signing off. And so there could be a conflict as well, which the chiefs had not addressed yet. So that's my reason for, and it is absolutely not a micromanagement thing. It's a, let's take care of the city thing. Let's take care of the staff thing.
Okay.
And also, I was just thinking when I was sitting here, I remember an employee when I was a county manager, actually, that signed the alcohol licenses in the state, but also was at night, she wasn't the bartender, but she's the one that took all the drinks to everybody.
Uh-huh.
It's like, wait, time out. You signed a alcohol serving license for Starmac, which is the name of the facility, and you're working there. That does not look good. So if you can avoid some of those conflicts as well, it's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
And she certainly didn't think about it as a conflict. She was just trying to earn extra money. Her kid was in college, and I mean, you want to support that, right? But there was definitely a conflict with her signing off on that license and then working it.
Right. I can see
So
that.
those are just a couple of little examples that I can think of. I'm sure thinking Blanco wouldn't have many problems with that, but it's nice to have that protectiveness.
In relation to law enforcement, the wearing of a uniform, let's say an officer is hired by Jim of the Hills to do something. Can they wear a city uniform while working for?
So it depends on the event. So right now, when they request, so the policy says that they cannot wear a city uniform unless it's a city event or a BISD event without getting prior approval. So depending on what that event is. So like for Lavender Fest, for example, they did not work for the city, but I allowed them to wear their uniforms. In fact, I wanted them to wear the uniforms because I thought it represented the city good in that light. So it's really on a case-by-case basis, depending on where that off-duty work is and what function they're performing. So we have built in our policy, there's certain restrictions. They can't work for an establishment that's more than 51% alcohol. They can't work for a monster. They can't drive a taxi cab. There's built-in conflicts with law enforcement. So it depends on where that is, and they have to request that in writing if they're authorized.
Thank you.
I have one more thing that I was thinking of also regarding micromanagement. If there's micromanagement in the city from a department director, or the HR person or whatever, obviously that's up to the city administrator to take care of. If there's micromanaging from the city administrator, you have the contract, pull it. You don't want that city administrator anymore. It's not difficult. It's nice to have that safety, that blanket in there. So obviously this is a policy, this is your decision. I'm just giving you my opinion based on my years of experience.
Any further discussion?
Do we have a motion in a second already?
Yes, we had a motion from Councilmember Smith and a second from Councilmember Barron. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries.
Did you, was the motion 4-1?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
yes.
Remember on the one, if you don't mind just saying who was opposed, just so she has to.
Councilmember Salceda opposed.
Thank you.
Yes, we are.
You're good.
You stand by your vote, right?
We are going to move on to the budget workshop. And the first and only item is budget discussion. So, okay.
Oh, that's a good view.
All right.
No.
This is the last meeting. I think you're sure. That's tough.
There was so much that I did. So you should have, you see, we killed a tree today, trying to get you, I wanted you to have something in hand, but I'm also going to tell you, I have never seen a budget like this and then tried to make sense of it and give you a tangible product. You don't have a tangible product in front of you. You have two people guessing, and then just using numbers from last year for right now. So yeah, this is in fact, I think it was Linda I told this to, said I am known to bring my students in who are getting their NPAs to come in and watch budget. It's really good for them. I would shudder if any of them were in the back room right now. Yikes. So this is, I'll tell you, I wanted to, Counselor Barron called me about this, and I think that I am doing my due diligence, and I'm being forthright with you by telling you that I was not happy with the audit presentation at the last city council meeting. Basically, the auditor said in a nutshell, yeah, you're doing fine financially, you have plenty of money in there. Oh, and then there's these things, these findings, and just glossed over them and left. So the very first finding on the audit, and I'm telling you this not to beat a dead horse, but because I think if Counselor Barron wanted some clarification, I feel like maybe the rest of you could benefit from it as well. Your first finding in your audit clearly says, can I grab it from you and read it? I don't know where it is. So what's really important in an audit, because they're not auditing every single check, every single deposit, they're taking samples. But as Mr. Neppendorf told you, you do have money in the bank right now. You're not in bad financial shape. You have a lot of debt, but you do have the money in the bank. But I've never seen this as a finding before.
This conference will now be recorded.
Because the audit ends, this audit that you just heard about ended September 30th, 2020. Now you're going to have one that ends September 30th, 2021. And there's no way to undo everything at this point. We just got to roll with it. I am going to strongly recommend that this audit firm be replaced. They've been with you for like 16 years. You need some new blood. You need somebody else to look at it from a different view. And I just felt like the importance of the first fund, and I won't even go through the other two, but, no, yeah, exactly. I mean, that really is the soup. That's everything that you can do. Nothing that you do complies with governmental accounting. And so I don't do that to be negative. I don't do that to humiliate anybody, but you deserve to understand and to know what's going on, and the public deserves the same thing. Those are public funds. And the sun needs to shine right now on where you are with your budget and where you are financially. So I won't beat a dead horse, but I really felt the need to say that and make sure that you all understand what a mess the financial side of your house is in. Here's this.
Thanks.
So with that said, I think what you have in front of you, are there any questions as far as what happened with the audit last week? Okay. So what we're trying to do today is a budget workshop, and you have a lot of stuff in front of you. You have something that looks like this, and that's projected revenues for your general fund. And then you have the appropriations in the general fund by department. So the first 2 pages is like a synopsis, and then after that, you have administrative, non-department. You go to the, oh, sorry, I didn't do it. So why do you have to have a budget? The local government code, chapter 102, under municipal budget, requires that you have a budget every year. The mayor serves as the budget officer unless you have a city manager in place. The budget should be proposed expenditures in the governing body for the succeeding year. You have to have, I wish that screen was turned a little bit, you have to have an itemized budget. And if you have a budget that's more revenue than the property taxes than you had in the previous year, you have to have a cover page with it explaining why. Just the fact that this budget is going to raise, the budget's going to raise more total taxes last year than last year's budget, sorry. So those are in a nutshell what 102 of the local government code says. That's why we're here. That's why we have to have a budget by September 30th. Next page. So one of you, I want to say it's Councilor Devine, but I don't remember, one of you was asking me about tax rates. Currently, you have an amazing tax rate, 0.3503. We are going to propose the same rate, we think, but right now there is a shortage in revenues, but we're still going to try to make that same tax rate work. We're not going to get our collection rate from Blanco County until July 25th. So we don't really, this is a guessing game right now. We don't have a number that Blanco County has collected yet. And so we're kind of taking last year's numbers and assuming about the same thing happens. So within your budget, you will see projected revenues. And you're going to see one at the top that says general fund and one on the side that says enterprise fund. And what we've done, we have, the general fund includes sales taxes, franchise fees, ad valorem taxes, various other fees that the city may collect, building permits. The enterprise fund is the revenues that you collect for your water, your sewer, and your solid waste. And what's really important to understand from the seat that you're sitting in is that your general fund has a lot of local government code restrictions on it. Your enterprise fund, you run it like a business. You don't really do governmental accounting on your enterprise fund. You run it like a business. And you have 2 schools of thought with the enterprise fund. And oh, by the way, Linda and I both agree that this was really important up there. You all need a revenue rate study so that we can figure out where we are in the enterprise fund. Right now, you have to have a revenue study. You know, a long time. We know that. And so we really need to go ahead and get a rate study done as soon as we can. But so the enterprise fund, you actually can make money off of the enterprise fund. So there's 2 schools of thought on that. One is why we want to make money. It's our citizens that are paying, so we want to give them the best rate possible. And at the end of the year, we'd love to come back with 0. Like, city didn't really make any money, but we were able to pay our bills, right? But the other school of thought is don't ever do that because you have this thing called infrastructure and it ages. And then all of a sudden, somebody up here comes and delivers the news to you that your clarifier is full of holes and very full of rust, right? And you go, I wonder what we're gonna do about that. Well, you have your enterprise fund set at a rate, your water and sewer rate set at a rate that the city was able to get by and pay their bills, but you never thought ahead about infrastructure and how you were gonna fund this later on. So those are the two schools of thought. I'm not here to tell you, I know which one I agree with, but you're the policymaker, I'm not. So you all, that's something that you all need to decide. So that's projected revenues for 22. Expenditures, as you can see, what I have is what 2021 was proposed at. And the reason I say it's proposed for 2021 is because your year's not over yet. Your year's not over until September the 30th. So that is about where we think you're going to fall. FY22, that's really a more realistic number because we have everybody that we know of personnel-wise sitting right there. M&O, which is your maintenance and operations. So just look at that as everything else besides personnel. Do I like to have it split out and show you how much we're spending in office supplies, how much we spend in travel? Absolutely. Right now, your books aren't clean enough. I'm hoping by next meeting, we could just get a little more detailed, but this is what I can give you today. So your M&O is spelled out on what you projected last year. And if you notice, we left the M&O the same. And then if you look at the INS, that's your interest in sinking. That's what you use to pay your debts. And so last year you used, we're going to end up paying $410,000 in debt, and it's going to increase by another $40,000 next year. And so I don't know how that debt was structured or what happened. I'm a big cheerleader of paying at the beginning of something, the higher rate, and then going down. So the city eventually, you know, that's just the way I like to do it, but that's not the way it was done here. So we're going to deal with what we have here. The projected expenditures, this is in the enterprise fund. So this is on the water sewer side. And you see the personnel is the same, M&O is the same, and INS is not the same. Oh, yeah, it is. No, it's off a little bit. So it's off $1,633, right? Yes.
1,033.
Anyway, so your INS is a little off on what the enterprise fund is going to play, but I just noticed that one of these two totals is wrong.
It looks like the M&O is off a little bit too. By
Yeah, sure is. Yeah. Mhm. No, I'm not sure what happened, but as I'll still say you're very, very close. We'll have to go back, but you're off by 1,000 there and you're off by 1,000 there, right? Next slide. So this is a proposal of expenditures by department, and you see the salaries and you see the M&O rates. City council is this body sitting right up here. Administration is city secretary, city manager, finance officer. Is that it? Non-departmental, we're not even sure what that's about.
Well, there's some, clearly will, there's some things that he has set aside, and some things that the council may have to look at next year with some suits that are going on with the city attorney. That's all I can tell you is what that entails. I don't know what anything is, this is what that means. And we'll discuss that when we go through this.
So non-departmental, we don't know what that is, M&O. We're told it's something having to do with lawsuits. We've set that number aside. Will is not here. I tried to call and ask. I didn't get an answer. He's on vacation or this week. So hopefully I'll have a better answer for you there, but it needed to be filled in. The municipal court, you can see the salaries there and the M&O. Streets, parks, police, same thing. I do want you to know that with police, we included 3 new full-time equivalent employees. That doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do. I just wanted you to see what that would cost. And then you have your development services. Go to the next one. That's all in general fund. Out of enterprise fund, That's what we have out of water and sewer for your salaries and for your M&O. And I'm gonna actually correct that first two numbers there are gonna be off by 1,000. I'm gonna correct those and I'm gonna send this out to all of you, just so you have it. You can reference it back to your sheets that you take with you. I really didn't want to release these sheets yet because I don't feel comfortable with them, but there was a couple of you that wanted paper in your hands. It's like, okay, let's give them paper in their hands and kind of look at it from here and see how, what you're thinking and how you're feeling. Next page, slide. Okay, so the recommendations that you see right now, I would love to get some guidance from you. The first recommendation is staff continue to work on fine tuning these revenues. There are accounts that we don't understand why they're in there. There's funds that were created, we don't know why. Stuff is deposited in the wrong place. We're just slowly trying to gather and fix it. I also have not done anything with hot taxes, and I would like to recommend that the next budget workshop that the Chamber of Commerce come and present on what they're doing with hot taxes, so that you can let me know if you want to leave that the same. Recommend that the city council determine today, give me an idea if you want a cost of living increase for the employees over the next budget year. And when you look at the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, you can see that Social Security benefits increased in 2021 for employees by 1.3%, and general goods were up 0.9%. So it would be a potential cost of living increase of about 2.2%. Recommend that the city council determine if you want to staff move rates to market salary for the next budget hearing. So I have had Joe contacting these various cities. I've got 12 or 13 cities in council plus data, just for your information, since you were tardy. I want you to know the cities that we've used so far, because I know you in particular were bothered by this. Wanted to make sure we were comparing more like apples to apples, right? So he's done Bulverde with 5,000 people, Castroville 3,000, Burnett 6, Dripping Springs 5, Hondo 4, Marble Falls 7, Horseshoe Bay 4. So we tried to get, Comfort is 3,700, but we don't have an answer from them yet. We've got Garden Ridge at 4,000, Johnson City at 2,131. So we're still trying to get some numbers, but I can tell you right off the bat for the finance director, she's low. And for the city secretary, she's low. I looked at those three positions because we were working on those numbers right now. And so I can always give you a picture of what it would look like to take staff up to market. I know for a fact you're gonna have some that already are market, like the police officers, they're paid good here. So that's not gonna be an issue. So I need to know if you'd like me to play around with those numbers a little bit. And also, what I'd like to do is just take a little bit of time so that Chief Rubin can come up and let you know why he's increased his budget by 3 people and what we think about that. Either I or Linda, one that should be fine, can speak on behalf of finance. I believe that another person is needed in finance, not permanently. But you're asking one person to do accounts payable, payroll, a budget, which is, it's been a nightmare. And then try to fix all the deposits, try to reconcile everything so that when we reach 2022's budget, we don't have these findings. That's asking, and oh, by the way, can you also wear the HR hat and make sure that, so I think you're asking a lot of one person.
And also the creative financials, getting them all done, and also the conversion to a new system, which is gonna be 10 times more work than it is because we don't have any numbers, there are no numbers.
You have nothing to trace.
Yeah, and to be truthful, I work 18 hours one night, day and night, 18 hours. And I'm tired of those hours.
So we need help. So one thing is that we get a temporary person in finance. The people that I know, like a CFO to go is what they're called. And we can try to get somebody in here temporarily. I don't believe that with the number of staff you have, that position, that department needs 2 people. Right now, you probably need 3. But the problem that I'm witnessing already is, so I think it was Councilmember Smith that, is there any way you can get somebody in there, help her, file it, whatever? Great suggestion. So now that she's done filing off of the floors,
anything else that she needs to do, Linda has to stop, take her time, and try to explain this to her and then watch her work. So it's not worth it anymore. Just a little bit of filing and that's it. We're caught up there. What we need is somebody who can do it. This is not a problem that was created in 1 year. And it's not gonna be fixed in a few months. It's gonna take some time. So you have to decide, do you want to invest in that or not? And then the Public Works is asking for one more person in an administrative capacity, and I'll let Zach talk about that, just so you can start processing this and thinking about it. And that's what these budget workshops are for. Get any questions that you may have answered, and then try to give you as much information as we have available to us. Okay, so you want to come up, Chief Rubin, and let me know what your thoughts are?
Are we talking about staffing?
Yes, just that.
So as you've seen, so we requested 3 full-time positions, 2 police officer positions, and that's to bring daylight control up to 2 bodies, so we have 2 officers per shift. A couple reasons for that. One is workload, as you see in the monthly reports, the amount of time that we're spending on calls for service, arrest, time out of the city. And to me, the biggest factor, like we talked about in the beginning, was just a pure officer safety issue. There's only 1 officer on duty. I give a lot of examples. Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, we had that major accident on 281, and we had day shift officers that were held over to almost 1 o'clock in the morning and had to be back to work at 6 o'clock that same day. Things like that are not anomalies, they happen quite a bit. I think it will also help impact overall some overtime budget. When there's 1 officer assigned to the shift, when one person takes time off, we have to flop people all around, and it makes it very difficult. So when you look at the number of calls for service, the number of arrests that we're making, the number of accidents that we work, many of those things require multiple officers. And again, it's just the officer safety factor of only having 1 officer in the city. So when we look at, for example, we can use Lavender Fest weekend, the chamber hired officers to be here in the city. That still left 1 officer in the rest of the city, and that's for Lavender Fest. And so if y'all come to the square on a Saturday afternoon, how many people are in Blanco on a Saturday afternoon? It's a lot. It's a lot more than 1 officer can. If that 1 officer is tied up on a call, there's no one available. So that's the police officer position. I guess about a month ago, I gave y'all in your box, if you have a chance to look at it, the strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan for the police department. And so these positions were listed in there based on working with the consultants, to move some of those numbers around in timeline. That's when we thought we would need to implement those. The code enforcement, animal control officer, that's something I think that we've been lacking for a long time. And then with that responsibility kindly being given to us by y'all, just 2 council meetings ago, it really requires somebody to do that. There's separate licensing, animal control is a whole separate issue. Code enforcement, it's city ordinance violations, things like that. But animal control is pretty specific. I don't believe that right now the city currently has a rabies control officer designated, which I think the state requires that we do. We have nothing in preparation for animals that are at large. We get complaints all the time about dogs running at large, dogs at large chasing chickens at large. So we have a lot of those issues. So I think that all those positions are very important. I think they're critical to the safety and security of the city. And honestly, I think that there's some liability by not having those positions filled. I get asked a lot, which return on investment. Well, we don't produce revenue, but our investment is also limiting the risk and liability of the city. And to me, that's the return on the investment. Questions?
So the idea of an admin for Public Works was kind of an idea that Ronnie threw out there. Right now, the public calls into Olga, any kind of water leaks, sewer backups, any issues. She then has to report that to us. So it kind of felt like that maybe take some of that heat off of her. She has a lot of stuff on her plate already with billing and everything like that. We also, especially as of late, have been getting tons and tons of public information requests, which depending on how big the amount of information they want, I can take us away from our duties for quite some time to get all those papers together, make copies for them, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of helped me in running out as far as being able to stay doing what we need to be doing to make sure our department runs smoothly and not have to take so much time away from that. It was kind of just an idea.
And thirdly, though, I'll add, because I was the one that actually put the voting on 0, I will tell you that, because I'm having problems on my end in accounts payable with getting all of the things that I need to pay bills and get them approved back to me on a timely basis. And sometimes I don't get them till, especially with credit card charges and different things that I have to allocate to different departments. So it's not a straight bill, oh, this goes to parks, oh, this goes to streets. It's not that way. So I need to sit down, and it takes me a lot of time to do that. And with an admin, then that admin will be able to get it correctly done and then send it to me for payment. And that will take a lot of time off of my plate as well. Because I'm going to say probably I spend twice a month. I'm going to say twice a month for about 3 or 4 days doing nothing but accounts payable for just that. Just water sewer. Not including anyone else.
With our department especially, we can have everything planned out for a set day and one phone call can change all that in a matter of a second. Major line break or something, 281. Whatever we had to get done that day, whether it was filing or paperwork, kind of out the window, we got to take that water back restored. So someone in that position that will be able to focus all their time on that kind of thing would help us out considerably.
And then I will add with the finance, the reason why we're looking for a full-time person is because not only to help you with accounts payable and accounts receivable, but also to alleviate the front when there are people gone or they're on vacation, because we don't have an extra staff. Either Lori and I are answering the phone or going up there and doing all the taking utility payments. And we don't have that time. We need another body. We need another body that can fill in and do these things, to help us, to make us perform what the job functions that we're supposed to be doing, not filling in for somebody else because they're not here.
If I could, Mayor, I have a few questions just as to what to expect coming forward. And I know that you're working sort of hamstrung on some of these things because of the numbers. But I'm thinking about, as we're looking at this budget going forward, will you have numbers for any increase in our debt service because of the Water Development Board loan for the water treatment? Is that already in here? Is that going to change? Is that debt going to get larger because of the increased amount of money we're going to have to hopefully borrow, or that they will add to it? And then other sorts of alternative or additional things, so that we're looking at a 5-year plan, hopefully, to look not just at the next year's budget, but beginning, are we just going to be lucky to get this budget done, as ragged as it may be, as opposed to thinking that we might actually be able to plan anything about replacing lines? And again, my concern is, and I don't know if it has anything to do with budgeting, but looking at anticipated expenses and anticipated revenues, you can't really count grant funds till you have them. But if we know what our expenditures potentially would be for infrastructure improvements and repairs, et cetera, getting them in the budget so we can see what we're going to be going after. And then options of, I also would like to look at options for what we pay right now for all of the things we do versus what, if any, of those services can be outsourced, and can they be outsourced in a way that is more affordable, that we could get more bang for the buck in doing it, some of those things. So will any of those options be there this time around, or is this called, yikes, here is where we are? Does that seem too ambitious for?
Linda's probably going to say yes and I'm going to say no. I can already tell you this one, but I'll tell you.
Well, I want was gonna say first, you have to remember that one statement that Kelly read in the financial. We cannot have any more debt. We're not gonna make bond ratings, because that really pretty much crashed us with the bond rating.
So, well, I agree with you, except for the Water Development Board.
Pardon me?
Except for the Texas Water Development Board, because they back the debt. That's the only way I think that you would, yeah, I don't even know what your S&P rating is right now.
So if you look at this, we're gonna go to the general.
Just, can y'all move the microphone so we can, the people, just, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It's a single sheet. This is your debt service schedule. I got this from Kelly, who got it from Craig, and I talked to him. Yeah, and I actually talked with him this morning because I had some questions and concerns, because typically when you're looking at this, it's all utility debt. And so my first question is why I understand why we're doing it, but why did they do it back then was my question. They never had they didn't have the fund structure to pay for the utility fund, never had the fund structure built into the rates in order for you all to support this debt. Because this debt, if you look at the bottom number, is 16 million. It's the third column. It says total annual debt service amount of 16,501,000. Okay, that is what the supported debt is. Okay, meaning that is what the general fund is paying, and it really should, the entire debt should be coming out of the utility fund. So that was the first red flag I had. And I was doing this last night because I hadn't even looked at it, to be truthful, until last night. And then one of the other things is I haven't seen any of your codification, haven't seen any documentations, I haven't seen anything in terms of setting up your reserves. Because when you get debt of whatever it is, especially if they're CO bonds or revenue bonds, they actually write in there that you have to have a reserve fund balance in your debt service. Well, first of all, we didn't even have a debt service. So now I have created a debt service. When you look at these two sheets, one says debt service fund, general fund, INS, and the other one says debt service fund, utility fund. Okay? So if you'll pull these two sheets out,
It must be attached.
It's the last page on that first, is that one anyway. That's the page in the first batch. One page looks like this. Oh, this is the.
Oh, here it's debt service fund, general fund, INS, and what was the other one?
utility fund.
It's
Called debt
got it.
service, utility fund, and debt
The
service,
back
general
page
fund.
Yeah.
Just debt service.
You all have never had that. You had a budget that you kind of sort of adopted last year, but the numbers didn't even tie, because you had, in the general fund, you had part of the utility fund, and vice versa, the utility fund, you had part of the general fund. So first of all this debt should be utility fund. I verified that this morning with Craig Cunningham. Okay, all of it. And he said part of the problem is that you are not online with the water, whatever we're doing with the water plant. And he said that it probably won't be completed for another 2 years. At that time, we absolutely must have a rate study, because this debt has got to be absorbed by the utility fund. And it's not going to be good, because it's going to affect your rates that you charge your citizens. Typically, I've been a public works director prior to my being here, as well as wearing a city manager hat in 2 different cities. And one of the things that I went to when I found out is that debt service has to be in your utility fund. It has to be sold to your citizens. You have to make it to where they realize that you have to pay, but they have to pay for this infrastructure, because it costs money to have water. It costs money for you to flush that toilet. And so they want the cities to invest in their infrastructure in terms of through the citizen. So it's up to the council and mayor to inform the citizens as to what is going on with the debt. And because we have such large debt right now, and it's not supported by the utility fund, it's being supported by the general fund, it's affecting your taxes. Because your taxes go towards, part of that money goes to not only the M&O for the general fund, but you're now supporting it with the utility fund having to pay that debt, which should be the utility funds. So that's a big no-no. I mean, it's a big problem. So we have got to figure out a way to get to the point where the utility fund can fund and finance all this debt. Okay, that's number one. Number two is the way the fund was set up. When you have, typically with most revenue bonds, there is a paperwork, in the paperwork, there's actually numbers in there that say you have to have this as a reserve, a restricted fund balance in your debt service fund to meet the payment of ballooned or overinflated or underinflated, prices that go in to other things in your utility fund. So they asked us, or they not asked us, they're telling us that we have to have that in there. I haven't seen any of your documentations. I really didn't get a chance to talk to Craig about that this morning, but I told him I wanted to see that. I wanted to see if we have to put anything in the restricted fund balance in your debt service accounts, because I don't know. It is not in there because I don't know. But what I do know is that what should be happening is we should be paying for everything out of the debt service fund and utility fund by transferring money from the general fund over to the utility fund. So that's what should be happening, but it's not going to happen this year because we have no idea what our expenses and how much money. It's going to affect fund balance, bottom line. It'll affect fund balance, the general fund, and it'll, in terms of taking money away to fix the utility fund, because we don't have the rates right now to do it. So in the next 2 years, that is something that Kelly and I are going to have to work on in terms of getting our finances correctly accounted for in the debt service funds, both general and interest and sinking, and the utility debt service fund, to make sure that we're accounting for everything properly and that it's actually funded. Because what if the general fund can't meet that payment to the utility fund? Well, it's the utility fund's debt. So the utility fund's got to figure out a way to fund that if the general fund can't. So it's a no-brainer, really, So that's the first issue we have. So or one of the issues we have. So if you look at look at this one here. This is the debt service schedule that I got. Kelly got this from Craig, and I talked to him about it this morning. So if you look at the very last line, it says 65%. That's what you got to look at 2022. That is what your general fund is actually paying. They're paying 65% of the utility fund's debt. Yeah. So anyway, what I had scheduled, and then that's another thing. The budget numbers that this is another thing too. So the budget numbers that were actually calculated in the 2020 tax rate that we got from the appraisal district is, what did I say, $20,000 off. And I'm not sure why they have that, because I know what typically in other cities and counties that I've worked at, they call the finance director if they're going to do it themselves, if the appraisal district is going to do it. I've always done it myself wherever I went because I don't trust anybody. This time I couldn't because I had no numbers, and there's nothing to really go by. But anyway, we have a $20,000 shortfall according to the calculated tax rate that was done in 2020. So that concerns me as well. I don't know what the numbers are going to be when we actually have real financial numbers to look at in the financial statements, because I don't have anything right now. So that's something you need to keep, in the back of your head. And you may have a shortfall of $20,000. The other thing is I'm hoping that when we get on July 25th, when we get the numbers from the county, it does pick up the correct numbers. Because if you look on our sheets, you'll see on the one that says debt service general fund, we have 450,345, and that actually entails in 2015, 2017, and in 2020. Those numbers I pulled right off of here, so you'll be able to find those. That's the debt that we're gonna have for the general fund, that's 65% that should be utility funds. The other amount that the utility fund is carrying and has carried, but the interesting thing was in last year's budget, actually in the budget process last year that's been adopted this year, they actually had the 2015 budgeted for in the water department's budget, which I really don't understand why. So I'm hoping that will help, because utility fund will be able to pay that $20,000 shortfall if that's the case, you know? So the actual budget, because of what's really the utility funds, will be your 2019 and your 2017 B. So again, it's going to be the two numbers that I have right here where it says UTL. Right, those two numbers, those two columns right there, those numbers are actually the utility fund and INS. The other three columns are the general fund. So the ones that I wrote it in my handwriting, ETL, on the column above it. So you see those two make up the utility fund debt service of 238,600. And you'll see that on the total of less supporting debt, less self-supporting debt is 238,599. Their numbers don't, they're rounding numbers. It's rounded off by $1. So my number is $1 more than theirs. So that is actually the utility fund debt that we're actually paying for. But for some reason, we budgeted for this fiscal year for 2015. Why? I don't know. So my numbers I know are good. Now, in terms of collections of the property taxes, we have to collect enough property taxes to pay for both of those. So it's going to be the 450,345, and then the other number of 238,600. That is going to be a must. So that's going to be the important key when we get the information from the county, the appraisal district, that says, I want to make sure that we collect enough money to cover both those numbers. If we don't, then we'll have to be transferring money from probably from the general funds fund balance to cover if we don't have it in the utility fund. And I don't know if we have it or not. So anyway, that's where those numbers are, and that's where we sit with the general fund debt service fund. The other ones are pretty much self-explanatory, but I wanted to get this out of the way, and I wanted to explain this to you because it is a concern. It's a concern that the council's going to have to look at, the mayor's going to have to look at in the next 10 years to get our debt in control and figure out how we're going to manage it to get the utility fund to be paying for all this debt and not falling on the general fund. Because 65%, the general, 35% is kind of okay, we can do that, but 65% is a big chunk. That's a big chunk of money that the general fund is paying. And why it was even done.
Linda, I appreciate everything you're doing to work on this. I mean, it's not a task I know many people want to take on with the accounting issues that we have. And I want to, again, thank you for that. And if there's anything we can do as council to help you reach a quicker resolution to the issues, let us know what we need to do.
I'm really tired. I mean, my minimum, I work here a minimum 12 hours every day, including weekends, every day. And I really need to get a body in here that knows what they're doing, that can help me, at least if nothing else, do the everyday stuff so I can address this stuff here to do the accounting I need to know.
That's a full-time job by itself.
Yeah.
So
we've got to get the financials in order. I mean, I laughed when I read that statement that Kelly wrote, that Kelly read me off. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. I laughed because I know exactly how that auditor feels, being an auditor myself. I mean, basically, yeah, they just throw us under the bus, but the sad thing is, it's true. It's absolutely true. And like Kelly mentioned, y'all, it's been going on for many, many years. I mean, from what I can tell, from 2014 on.
Okay, well, let us know.
Okay, so that is the debt service. If there's no questions on that, we can go on to the general fund, and we'll go through the general fund. Each department that's here can discuss any of it, but most of it is pretty much the same. We try to keep the same because we don't know what expenditures are. I will tell you that I did put the audit numbers. The audit numbers that I used was your numbers for your net change in financial position. And the reason why I did that is instead of the other numbers that they use is because your net change in financial position affects your fund balance. So you need to know what your real numbers were that affected your fund balance to get to that number. So when you look at your actuals right here on the first page of the general fund, so if you go to your general fund budget, your first page, you'll see the actual 1920. These are all numbers that I got off of our financial report. So those numbers are good. Those are audited numbers. But when you do the audit, when they did the audit, they don't go in line item by line item. So if you look at total permits and licenses, their revenues was only 44,312. So we know what actual revenues were for permits. And then you could look at the budget that we had this year, which was 52,095. And then you can look at what actuals are at 6:30, what we're projected to be, the proposed base, and then where it's going to live. So that is how I came up with the actual revenues, because the revenues is what my biggest problem is in the financial aspect of books. My first thing, I think most of you know, is that I can't do a journal entry in there because according to Tracy, and it's absolutely right, I saw it when I did the manual checks. If you put a journal entry in there, it doesn't go where you want it to go. Now, where it went, I don't know. Got to figure that out because I had to do manual checks with people. And I did the journal entries and I knew she told me was going to do it, but I wanted to see for myself. And sure enough, I'm running the reports and there is no July payments of payroll. And yet I did everything, days of manual of working on that. So I've got to look and see what happened to that. But neither here nor there, that's payroll issue, and I do know that the liability aspect of the payroll is good. Because I sat there and I made sure that I added up everything to make sure that we're paying an IRS. I don't want any more IRS audits, so I was really adamant with that. So that's where all these numbers come from. But with the permits, which my number may change drastically, the permits, the utility billing, and municipal court. Typically, you just enter in income and it goes right to it goes right to where it belongs, you know, if it's a fine or if it's a permit for roofing or a permit for electrical or if it's notary public, I mean, it goes right there. That's not what happened. Somehow or another, she decided that my prior predecessor decided that she wanted to write an invoice for all the money that came in. So she wrote the invoices for in other words, she ran utility billing. Let's say utility billing was $200,000 for the month of January. And she, because it's not, they don't talk to each other. The RDS does not talk to QuickBooks and QuickBooks doesn't talk to the courts. So she did an entry where she created an invoice. And then she offsetted all those revenues to that invoice, not to the line item where it should have went. And so at the end of the year, the auditors had to go in and reclassify everything. That's why we have said, well, I have 17 pages of journal entries that I can't even put in the books because she told us not to. The mayor was on the phone call with me because it doesn't go where you want it to go. So when we get the new system, what I'm going to have to do is enter in every single solitary deposit that we have made since October 1 to now. And then how do I enter in, how do I reconcile bank statements if I can't even enter in the revenue?
Linda, I have just a quick question. You mentioned the new system.
Right.
Are we all good? Is there anything you need from us? Do we have money to buy it? Do you need approval to buy it? Do we need so that you've got the software and the things that you need to begin to do these things?
It depends. Are we going with, I mean, I don't know what we're going with. Are we gonna go with AdCom? Are we gonna go with Encode? I prefer to have Encode to be truthful.
So, right now, we both strongly are big advocates of Encode. Because it's what we know. And we know that everything talks to each other that way. And you're not doing double and triple entering. So, and the other thing is with the software company that Blanco signed up with, which was in November or December of last year, we are sitting here in July now, and they've done one thing. They've given us one deliverable so far, and that's the kiosk that sticks into the mayor's office. It's the only thing we have from them. And so I actually sent the agreement to Brad, asking him, getting some opinions about that agreement, and some questions I have. So as soon as that's answered, then I'll be able to let you know what software we're going. So.
Now, the Encode is the fund accounting?
Yes.
Okay.
But isn't it like backlog for like a year?
Well, he
Yeah.
told me that the minimum it will take to bring Encode in is 6 months, but probably out to a year. That's what he told me. But, you know, it really depends on when we go forward with it. He said there's a lot of cities right now that are wanting it. It's because it does everything. And it's not labor intensive. I looked at AdCom's software, they were showing me just accounts payable, and it's very labor intensive. It'll take me 3 times as long to do an invoice than it did with QuickBooks. I will say that QuickBooks is very good on the accounts payable side. I will give it that. It is not with payroll. It is not with payroll at all. But it is good, and it doesn't give you the reports you want. And of course, you can't have a budget in there, so that's the problem we all have had, is that there's no budget. So you don't have a budget versus actual. You're looking at a profit and loss statement that conglomerated everything together. And then I had to pick it apart. It was so labor intensive to do this, to get these numbers to be able to put this on here. And it's still, as you know, not done. You know, I'd like to try and get more actuals in there, and I'm gonna try. I've got Natalie, the little high school lady right now that's helping me add some of the vendors, so I could put them in. I was able to put some in to give staff, because the staff doesn't know. I mean, Public Works and Police are nipping at the bit to get numbers because they haven't had any. And I understand the frustration, especially with y'all. So I mean, it's upsetting to me.
So I was going to say a couple things before Councilor Aaron. I want to see if you had any other questions.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. My apologies. This is as long as I can sit at one time before I have to go and stretch for 30 minutes in ice, but it's been good and I'll be back full speed by next appointment, next workshop time.
Good luck and Godspeed on your healing. I just wanted you to know a couple of things because I now plan on putting some tennis shoes on and getting to work. And so one of the first things I'm going to do is meet with TWDB. There are, I thought the way they were tagged, I thought some of them were grants. They're loans that the city of Blanco has actually taken out and had TWDB sign and has paid for stuff that we didn't get reimbursed. There's money just sitting in those accounts right now. And so we need to try to get it all over here, get it to the correct side. I also wanted to say that Joe, in doing his work, found that there actually was a water study done a few years back by Philip Gibbons. I don't know if any of you remember that, but I'm gonna pull that.
The rate, I mean, there was a rate increase, a water rate. Do you remember that, Zachary? It was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago when there was a, where there was a rate. I think Martha Gosnell was still on council at the time, and you were there, Martin, but the rates went up, but I don't know how much or how.
So we may just be able to get that kind of updated. So the one thing that we know for sure is that your INS rate is right. I've been in contact with your bond attorney, got this information, Linda's talked to him. If there's anything we're comfortable with, it's your debt rate. We're not comfortable with it because some of it's coming out of the general fund, but we know what you owe, so we're not gonna let it. Right. The other thing is, in the next presentation, it will be a lot more elaborate. You'll see missions in every department. You'll see expenses a little more categorized. You'll see capital improvement plans, which I know you've been waiting to see, Councilor Barron.
I haven't gotten
We're not there yet, but we will be by the next budget meeting. So we'll just keep giving you a little more information. And if you feel like after the second budget workshop, that we need another, then tell us what you need and we'll hone in on specific things for you. But I think, I'm sure as Linda has described, she described it to all of us. I'm not certain. Oh, Chief is saying he's not gonna be here for the next meeting, so if you have any questions about
Oh,
his budget.
so that's where we cut it. No,
There you go.
So I just want you to know, so in my budget, there's certain items under my equipment, so I tried to keep the dollar amount the same from last year to this year. But I wanted you to know that some of those are obligating ourselves to like a 4-year deal on some of those things. And so it's laid out in the budget, so you'll see it, but I have to get my mandatory training at the next budget meeting, starting North over here, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention now to make sure that you do that.
And I'll point out too that he has in his budget on page 12, he has a vehicle purchase for the code enforcement purchase, so if you go through the code enforcement purchase, that vehicle.
That vehicle strictly for the code.
Right. On page 12.
Good. And I would just say that again, I know that a lot of this, the money we're hoping for, like manna, is gonna be in the form of loans, but I am also optimistic that some of that money will be in the form of grants. Fingers crossed. I don't think they're gonna loan it all, so I think they're gonna grant a good bit of it. So trying to figure out where we can get the money that won't just, well, we can't get any more debt. Who would loan us anymore? Except for the water utility boards that are already into our lease. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask about the time for next Wednesday already.
Well, yes, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions of either one of us?
Are you giving?
Regarding budget.
Next Wednesday?
I think I can, didn't bring the calendar.
Okay.
I'll call you up.
Okay, and then we also want to ask about the time, since the next budget workshop is 3 o'clock.
I'm doing that one today, so I thought we were talking for today. Yeah, tell me too. I'm all days. I'm looking.
Next Wednesday, the 28th.
Right.
I will add one other thing, the smaller ones that we have here, they're all, in the past, they've been conglomerated with the general fund and the utility fund all together in one. I actually broke them out, so you've got special, each one of these is a separate fund. So they're either special revenue funds, or restricted, they're court security, COVID, which is a grant, FEMA, which I'm not really sure if when Will gets back, I'm gonna have to ask him about that, because I really don't know what that is, but you've got your court restricted funds, and that has got, and you'll find some of these numbers in the financial statement at your end balance, so your 2019-20 actuals are actually from the financial report. So you actually have a beginning balance and an ending balance of what your court technology and court security and court efficiency fund money is from the financial report. And then the other one, you will get CIPs, they will all be separate funds when I get them from Ronnie or whoever. And then you have the community aid, which I'm really not even sure what this is. But then you have your hotel motel, and then that's it, the COVID. So you've got your FEMA one that I'll have to get with Will. We've got the COVID that I'll have to get with Will to find out, because I know we're expecting more money with the COVID. I don't know how much, I don't know when.
That's, I'm gonna have that application due August 2nd.
Okay.
And then I'll be attending, just probably hopefully via Zoom, but webinar in the fall as to the second one.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So the only other one would be the community aid. Okay, that's the that's the only other one that I can questions on too, so there you have it. And on the community aid, those were the requests that each organization submitted. I will say I've never seen that before, so that was interesting to see. But the numbers are there for you to do what you want to do, so just let me know.
And next time we won't get so deep into the weeds. We'll, make it more of a bird's eye view, and then you guys can pull in and ask the questions you want. Okay.
Well, again, thank you for what y'all are doing, and look forward to more concise numbers.
So do we.
Yeah.
Scary out there like this. So for the workshop on the 28th. Do we agree on the day, Mayor? I mean, on the time?
Can we do 3:30? I have a 3:00. That should be good. So 3:30 would be better.
3:30?
3:30?
Does-
Feel like it. Any chance of moving that to Tuesday?
Tuesday, would it be the 26th?
27th.
27th?
I won't be here the 27th.
You won't be here?
No, I'll be here that night.
I'm sorry.
No, I won't be here till that evening.
Oh, till that evening,
Till that
okay, till that night.
So the 28th, 29th, 30th, anywhere after that.
Can you do it the 29th or something? Or is there another day that would work for you, Keith?
I'm out the 29th.
You're what? You're,
I'm on vacation the 29th. I'm gonna have my 2-year-old grandbaby, so that's probably gonna bring her. It's quite entertaining.
What do we look at the 28th for the next one?
That's what, or 28th, 29th.
I'm usually working in the evening, except for Tuesdays.
you work every evening except for Tuesday?
What about Tuesday evening,
So the 27th and the,
like at 6?
Counselor Smith is gone.
Oh.
Counselor Smith,
on
could you,
27th?
could you get in by that time?
I can probably be here by 6 or
Six.
7. 6 on the 27th.
I'm good on the 27th.
At 6?
No, that car's still in the shop. Doesn't mean you get it all.
I'll get to do the 200 miles an hour coming here.
Oh, you're over on
The road's not as straight.
But Councilmember Smith,
Roads anyway. You shouldn't do
till
that.
the evening of the 27th.
29th would be better for me only because I'll have one number slow.
So Linda's just talking about the 29th and how that would probably be better for her because you might have some more numbers by then.
I can't do any more budget this week because I have payroll and I have huge accounts payable this week.
Okay, so you, this is
So you're
29th.
voting the 29th?
But it still comes down to Keith. Can you do I 29th? I might be able to.
Switch something around or do
I'll
it
see if
during
I
the
can
day?
Arrange it.
But you can't be there the 29th, Mike?
I can't.
Oh, you can't, okay.
I can't.
You won't be here the 29th unless you bring your baby. Your grandbaby.
Yeah, bring her along.
Well, I mean, we can do whatever. It's, like I said, I just want to have all the numbers.
Yeah.
I guess, Linda, what you're saying, you don't need it any sooner than the 28th. Is that correct?
Well, no.
Or the more days
She's
we.
saying the more time she has.
And I have to do this all manually.
Right, so,
Everything's.
More
all
time
admin.
the better. So now we're looking at the 29th, as long as it's
29th, 30th.
okay for Lori to not be here.
Yes, absolutely.
so
29th, what time?
anytime.
I'm available 3. Time to be on the 29th.
29th at 3? Okay.
And that's a Thursday? Is that right?
Yes.
Thursday at 3 o'clock.
I'm number 3. On
Okay.
Thursday, the 29th.
And we're gonna have the clarifier on that agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to see that prior, if I could,
See what, right?
the change order
Oh,
or the proposal, the evaluation. Yeah.
I can have my deputy city secretary, Olga here, take minutes.
So Thursday, the 29th.
At 3?
3 o'clock. 2 o'clock on your calendar.
I'm perfect.
I'm kind, man.
Forgot about that long commute for Duncy, that hour commute.
Oh, hold on.
Oops, what?
She's got something else.
So,
I don't know if you're not prepared to give direction, that's okay. We can do it with and without. But if you go to the last slide, Zach, some of the things that would be helpful are wanting to know if you want me to come up with a chart that shows you where certain staff members are, if they don't fall in the market and where they should be. If you want me to come up with numbers for the potential COLA increase, if you're okay with the chamber presenting at the next one about the hot taxes. And
And then, I mean, the first recommendation we have to do, honestly. So we can try to get closer to accurate. And then, right, if anybody has any thoughts or decisions on the police 3 positions, the finance position, and the public works position, do we have any direction for any of those?
You know, if we had numbers,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah,
give you directions.
So
I mean,
even
it's-
direction, I mean, I guess, I could make it easy on you. I can say, here is what markets look like, here's what it looks like now. These are the best numbers. I could just give you both.
I think a retention of employees is critical. I mean, and it's impacting business all across the United States.
Sure is.
You can't just turn a blind eye to it.
No, and I think the other thing is that I've started to really learn is how seasoned people or people with experience are absolutely sought after. And you don't realize that until you're, in like the position that I'm in. But I guarantee you, your police chief, your public works director, who's got, all of his certifications, that kind of stuff, all it's going to take is somebody to, pay a market, and we're not. So just
I
stop, your
guess- I guess
CFO.
If we can afford it, I want to do everything.
Right.
Okay? But if we can't afford it,
Absolutely, I understand.
Right. And then when it comes to like the 3 police, and we have to prioritize, like, is it 3 police or do we put that money towards streets? I mean, that's where, I mean, we'd love to do all of it, but that's where we have to prioritize.
I guess we could look at the cost on each.
So that's what we'll have for the next
And
meeting.
it just, I mean, you could say, all right, for admin, public works, this is what you're gonna add to your budget. For 3 officers in animal control or whatever, then this is what you're gonna add it. And then let us look at the cost and then look at the available funds, because maybe we'll have a better idea of what we can and can't do. Because I mean, we're going to our general fund to service our debt already. And you can't, it's already carrying 65% of our debt. You can't keep going to the same well.
What you could do if all that debt was allocated to the right place.
Well,
Be nice.
That's not an option, is it?
I'm actually going to go to TWDB, and now that I have more time here, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to go talk with them and see if there's anything could be restructured or anything like that, what we can do. I'm just not, the thing about TWDB loans that are really nice and are really different than anything else is that they're backed by TWDB. So it's hard to get them. I would think if we just went out to the regular market with a bond company, I would think you would have a very hard time.
With a financial statement with a red stamp on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what killed it. That's what killed it.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Well, then we'll come back with a little bit of everything for you just to look at next time.
And I'll put the 2, I'll let them off to the side, but I'll let them.
Thank you.
Can I say something about staffing? So we can also, with staffing, it's also scalable, so, 2 officers at mid-year is better than no officers, and it's that same cost, but lower benefits and everything else. So if we can't fund something all year, we can do it by quarter. So, I would say code enforcement right away, and then if you need to do, at the half, have Mark look at filling some of the positions for us, because it's going to take us, honestly, it takes us a couple of months to fill a position anyhow. So if it's authorized in October, realistically, we don't have boots on the ground December, January. So there is some savings that way just by implementing these different positions at different times of that apply.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Could I get to clarify, what is Will Dave's role right now?
Yeah.
I've had people asking.
That's a good question in regard to code
Do you have
enforcement.
can you pull up Mr. Dave's job description? Thank you. So Mayor Councilor McClellan, I'm actually going to read you what I've put as the duties are in his job description. But after talking to him and trying to understand what he did, he was not a codes officer at all. He was really more of a community development type person. working with the building permits and the zoning that you have and that kind of stuff. But I actually sat with him and tried to itemize everything that he did. And so I'll read that to you here in just a second.
I have it right here if you want.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you. Got it. Thank you. Okay, so he assists businesses, property owners, and developers with the permitting process, such as interpreting zoning regulations and UDC definitions. Assists third-party vendors on building and site plans, staff liaison between local businesses, property owners, and contracted city engineer. Ensure the accuracy of the C of O process. Act as a staff liaison with the health inspector. Assist customers with requested variances. Liaison between city board, developers, property owners, citizens, and other staff throughout the organization. Makes variance recommendations to planning and zoning commission and city council. Makes presentations to city council on development, planning, and zoning issues. Acts as staff liaison to planning and zoning commission. Acts as staff liaison to historical commission. General customer assistance on permits, development, zoning, international building code, and the UDC. Any and all other assignments as directed. So some of these that I just read, and they're very rare that they happen. And I also have asked Mr. Daves at the time that his position went to 25 hours a week, that I would like to shadow him, follow him, understand exactly what he's doing. That if this position is needed 40 hours, I needed to understand why. I still don't understand why. And so at this point, I'm recommending that it stay at 25 hours a week. And actually, I may even have a different recommendation at the next.
How many hours per week?
25. Yes, sir.
His budget salary is in that budget.
Yes.
Developmental services.
At 25 hours.
So, a lot of those things are not being done at this time. We found that many of those things, like working with the health inspector, you're not doing, and you should be doing. A lot of these things are in there that shouldn't be done, but not done in years upon years. So if you look at the position based on how it's been in the past, you're not going to be looking at it on what it should be in the future. So please keep that in mind as well.
I think probably something else to keep in mind that I really need to understand a little better is if you have a fire inspector's stamp on something, and if I have a health inspector's stamp on something or an electrical inspection on something, I don't need somebody from the city to come back and say, okay, we have that, like your receptionist can do that. Okay, go check, check, check. We have all these inspections. Because the only inspections that we're going to care about are the people that are certified, that are able to actually do the inspections. So if the city is to pass the health inspection, for instance, we don't do those. Okay, let me go a different route. The city is to pass an electrical inspection because we would actually go after the electrician if it was permitted improperly, not a city staffer. And so anyway, I'm still trying to understand all of that by doing some shadowing. I just haven't had a lot of luck with it. But I really want to understand why we need another person to go and look at the inspections that are already being done by professionals. So, but maybe there's a really good answer to it. I just don't know what it is right now.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
Councilmember Smith has made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Councilmember McKellen has seconded. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned at 5:26.
Midnight. What did Connie?
She did it, everybody's.